Hello everyone, this video is designed to help teachers who are interested in personalizing their learning. So what I'm going to show you is how to develop an assessment in Google Forms, and then how once that assessment is taken, a playlist or a link to a site or some other object can automatically be sent to the students based off of how they did on the assessment. So students can get something a little bit more personal, a little bit more on their level, and they can get it based off of how they did on this assessment. So this is a very vague setup for it, but hopefully it gives you enough information on how to do this so you can set this up for your own self. So the first part of this is you want to be able to set up your own form. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail, but I will include links below on how to use Google Forms if you're not already familiar on how to do that. But you're going to obviously, for the students to take the assessment, you're going to have to complete or set up a Google Form. So I have created one here, and I have it already done and completed. And what I am going to do is I am going to have my assessment done, and the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to take the assessment for myself so that I have a answer key for any other responses that come along with it, so I have a basis for comparison. So I'm going to have my quiz completed, and now I'm going to go to my live form and I'm going to take my assessment, and what I'm going to show you next will be some things that I'm going to do in my spreadsheet, my response sheet that comes along with my Google form. So now that I have my Google form completed, I have entered 3 different responses. The first one is my answer key response. This is one that, as a teacher, that I would fill out, and I would let this be the basis for all my other responses. And then you see here I have a test response 1 and a test response 2. These are my student responses. And so what I need to do next is I need to set up a formula, and I'm going to start with an if statement that's going to calculate whether or not the student got the question right, and then that's going to add up the number of points or the percentage that the students will receive for this particular assessment. So there are add-ons that can do this. Like you can use Fluoro to do this, but I'm going to just use I'm just going to write the statement myself, and I'll explain why as we a little bit later as we go forward. So I'm going to write my if statement that's going to calculate the grades for all these, and I'm going to write my if statements over here. So the first one I'm going to write here is for this first student, test response number 1. And I'm going to write an if statement that's going to compare their response with my response. And if their response is the same as my response, then they're going to get the points, because that means they got the question right. If their answer is different than my answer, than the answer key's answer, then that means they got the question wrong, and they're not going to receive any points for it. So I'm going to go over here and write my if statement. So I'm going to start by selecting equals, and then I'm going to type the word if. And then you see that pulls up all the functions that are related to if in Google Sheets. So I can just click on this. If you know how to write if statements already, then you don't have to do this. You can just keep writing. But I'm going to click on this, and then you see here it pulls up kind of a tutorial of what you have to have in your if statement. So the first part you need to have here is your logical expression. You see it's outlined here. This is the section that you're on. So I have to write my logical statement. And my logical expression for this is, does the student's response equal my response? Are they the same? So to do that, I'm just going to click the student's response, and I'm going to say equals the answer key's response, basically asking the question, did the student get the answer right? And the way I can tell is if their response is the same as the answer key response. So I put E3 equals E2. And I put my comma to move on to the next section. So I got my logical expression, comma, and then I go to my next section, which basically says what value is going to show if my condition is true. So if E3 is equal to E2, what do I want to show? Well, this is where I'm going to put the point value for this particular question. So I'm going to say give 20 points. You can make this point value whatever you like. Just make sure you put it in quotation marks, just like it shows here in the example. Make sure you put that in quotation marks. So if the student's response matches the answer key's response, they get 20 points. That's what's going to happen if it's true. If it's not true, then they get 0 points. So I'm going to put 0 quotation marks. So again, you put your expression. What's the condition that we're testing? What's going to show if that condition is true? What's going to show if that condition is false? Notice right here, Google will give you a preview of what's going to appear once the statement has been completed. So that's kind of a good way to measure whether or not it was written correctly. So I'm going to complete this with my parenthesis sign, hit enter, and now I have my if statement written there. And now what I can do is I can copy that to the rest of these. Now there's 5 questions, so I'm going to want to copy over to 5 cells. So I have it 3, 5. So I have this, so I can get rid of that one. And so now I have my formula copied over. And now all I need to now I can copy this down. But before I copy it down, it's important to note that I do want to anchor certain things in my formula, so when it copies down, certain things don't change. Like for example, for each question, I always want them to compare to the answer key that is in row 2. So I don't want row 2 to change as this formula is copied down. So to make sure that row 2 doesn't change in these, I am going to put a anchor sign, which is a $sign in each one of these. So I'm going to go over here and do that for each one to ensure that that formula copy that row stays the same as it's copied down. Okay, now that I have the whether or not the student got that question correct or not, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to add up the number of points they got for this. So that lets me know what their total percentage was. So I can do a sum function. So I'm going to go over here and type in a sum function that's going to add up their score from here. And it will add up all those numbers for me. And I'm not sure why that's entering in a 0. J3 through N3. So let's redo that. Let's do this. Let's do this manually, plus this, which is 20, plus that, still 20, plus this one, this, which gives me 60. I'm not sure why the sum function wasn't working, but that's okay. We just copied everything down. Okay, so now I have my formula written for this one. Everything is set, ready to go. So the next thing I want to do is I want to use an add-on in Google to copy this formula down. So I could just select these and drag it down, but as additional entries are entered in here, that formula won't copy down. It's going to add a new row in here for each entry, so that formula won't copy down. So I want to use the copy down add-on that's available here to ensure that whenever a new entry is entered, all the formulas that I have in here, these if statements, these if statements will show, as well as this sum function here. Okay. This is also why I chose to do this manually as opposed to using an add-on like Flubaroo. If I use Flubaroo, number one, it's going to calculate everything in a separate sheet, and all of the calculations will start down around cell row 8 or 9, and for the copy down function to work, I need my formulas to be somewhere in row 2 or 3. So that's why I do that. So So I'm going to go here to copy down and go to my copy down settings, and it's going to start working, and it's going to put this little disclaimer up here to let me know how this works. You see right here, when turned on, any formulas in row 2 or 3 you choose in the form response sheet will automatically be copied down. So again, that's why I did this manually up here. So I'm going to turn this on. It's going to start looking for formulas in either row 2 or 3. I'm going to say nothing, not 2. I want to look in row 3, and here it found the formulas. I'm going to tell it to paste all of these formulas that I wrote down here. I'm going to save the settings, and now everything has been set. And if I click out of this, you see my copy down formula is here. So now if I go back to my form and do another live form, so let's do test response 3. Now if I fill this out, I'm just putting random answers here. And if I hit submit, now if I go back to my spreadsheet, you see it copied all the formulas down. Everything works seamlessly right there. So now as I add new entries, everything that's in here will automatically be copied down. Okay, so we have created our form, we have filled it out, we've set up our spreadsheet with our formulas within them, and that calculates everything, and so now that our spreadsheet for the most part is set up, so now we need to go to our third component of this, which is to set up a table that identifies what playlists are going to be assigned to what grades, and then set that up to automatically display based off of the students, how the student did on the assessment. I know that sounds confusing, but I'm going to walk you through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this plus sign to create a brand new worksheet within my current sheet. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make a table. And the table is just going to be 2 columns. It's going to be very simple. The first column is just going to be grades. These are going to be the different grades that are going to be available. So I'm just going to make a little list here, copy the pattern down. Whoops. And I'm just going to copy it down to 100. Okay, and then next to each grade, this is where you would put a link to where you want the student to go if they scored that grade. So if a student got a 10 out of 100, what do you want them to do? If a student got a 20 out of 100, what do you want them to do? If a student got a 90 out of 100, what assignments do you have for them? This could be a link to a blend space. This could be a link to a document that has a list of resources for the students to interact with. This could have a link to some videos that you want students to watch. It could be a variety of different things, but this is where you're going to put what you want the students to go to, or where you want the students to go to based off their grade. So what I'm going to do here is I am just going to put some links to some of my playlist videos that we have here for our YouTube channel. So I am going to just copy those there and include those as a part of my my playlist sheet. Okay, so now I have links for all the different possible grades that they would have. So if a student got a 10, they're going to go to this link. If they got a 40, they're going to go to this link. So if they got an 80, they're going to go to this link, so on and so forth. So the different options that are available. So now I'm going to go back to my form response sheet over here. And I have to write one more formula within my spreadsheet. And this one is going to be a VLOOKUP that is going to look up what the student's final score was, and based off that, it's going to find which video that student is supposed to watch. So the way we do that here is I'm going to do a VLOOKUP, so it's equals VLOOKUP. This is another function that's available in Sheets. And just like we did when we did the if statement, once you type it in, you can click on it and find it in Google. It'll pull up for you, and you can follow the tutorial. So the first thing it's going to ask you is very simply, what's the search key? What are we going to be looking up? And like we said before, we're going to be looking up the student's grade for the assessment, which is right here. This is the student's grade. That's the value we're going to be looking up. So we can just click there. Okay, and then we're going to hit the comma sign, and that brings us to the next option, the range. Where are we going to be looking this up? We want to be looking up the student's grade in this table. So we want to highlight this table because this is where we are going to look for the student's grade. Notice we have two columns available here. The first column is where the grade is. The second column is the place we want the students to go. So column 1 is grade, column 2 is the playlist. So we have the table selected, and I'm going to select over here. It's still my formula here, so I'm going to select comma, and now Google moves over to the next one. Okay, now that you know what we want to look up, we know where we want to look it up. It's asking us the index, and essentially the index is asking us which column is the lookup value in. Well, the lookup value was a student's grade, and the grades are in the first column. Okay, no, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The index is asking, once we find the lookup value, which was the student's grade, what column is the information in? Well, there's only 2 columns, so the only other column is the second column. So you would want to put 2 here. I apologize, I said that wrong. It's important to know that when you do your lookup statements, the lookup value, wherever that lookup value is, it needs to be somewhere in the first column of your table. So notice my grades are in the first column, so it knows it's going to be looking in this column for the student's grade. And once it finds the student's grade, what column are we pulling the data from? Well, there's only 2 columns for this one, so it has to be the second column. There are cases where if you have larger tables, you may have a 3rd or 4th column, but in this case, it's very easy. We only have 2 columns. It's looking up the first one, so it has to be column 2. And I'm going to put this last one here, and this one is the index asking, is the range sorted? In this case, it pretty much is, so we're going to type in true. I know sometimes you might have trouble with this, there's only 2 options here. It's true or false. So and the truth is, it's also optional, so you don't have to put it, but it can be helpful. So I'm going to put true here, and then you're going to see here it put the playlist that was connected to the 60. You can look here and see the ending XES for the 60. If I click on the table for 60, I can see it has the XEX. So I see that worked. And so now the only thing I want to do is I want to redo my copy down function, because now I have one more formula in there, and I want this to copy down automatically whenever someone enters stuff in. So I'm just going to say to rediscover formulas, and it looked it up and it found it and checked that VLOOKUP off for me, so that one is good. And now we're all set to go with this one. So just so you can, just so it's easy to see, I'm going to do one more test function. So and I'm go back here to my sheet. It's been completed. So I see my response, then my grade copied down, and there is the sheet, or the playlist that's going to go down with it. So since I've already done these, I'm going to go ahead and copy that formula down for that one. So now I have my spreadsheet completely set up. My formulas are all done. There's one last step to completing this whole process, and that is automating the process for getting this information to the student. All right. we've done a lot of work with this. We're at our final step for completing the process, which is basically how are we going to get this information to our students, and how are we going to automate that process. And what we're going to use is an add-on called AutoCrat. We're going to use this to set up a system that will, whenever someone completes the form, whenever they complete this assessment, it's going to automatically send them something in their Google Drive, as well as an email if that's something that you have. You don't have to do the email, but that's certainly an option for you. So I want to show you a couple of things that I've done in here. So I want you to notice that when I came in here before, these cells in row 1 were automatically in here because they were in my form, but these ones that I entered in here in terms of their formula were not. So I just entered some column headers for organizational purposes, because I'm going to show you here in a minute, because we're going to be pulling data from here. So I just put A1 for answer 1, answer A2 for answer 2, so on and so forth, and then here I put the score. And then over here I put a playlist heading, because this is where all the playlists are going to be located. I also put one more entry into the form, so we could have a different email address come up. So instead of it being my CMS one, it's a different one that I have. Okay. One other thing that I did is I also, and you have to have this when you use AutoCrat, I had a template developed. I created one, I gave it a name, and I typed in what I wanted in the template. Now you can add whatever content that you want to it. You can add images, you can add color, you can change the look and feel of it as much as you need to. The key thing I want to point out to you are these merge tags. I did put merge tags in here. You'll see they have these two little characters in here that kind of indicate that they are merge tags. So there they go in the front and the back. And these are tags that I am pulling from my form. So I'm setting this up so that when AutoCrat sees these merge tags, it recognizes the fact that this is data it needs to pull from my form. So I created a mail tag for my first name and last name, because I wanted to pull the student's first and last name. I typed in some information. I wanted to pull the student score, so I included that in there in the automation process. And I also included the playlist. So this is where it's going to know what playlist to select for the student. So what I do now is I'm going back to my spreadsheet, and I'm going to run the add-on AutoCrat. So I'm going to select add-ons, go to AutoCrat, I'm going to select launch. AutoCrat's going to come up. I'm going to select a new merge job, starting something from scratch. I'm going to let that load. And so now the first thing is asking me to pull that template. So that template that I just showed you that I made, you need to pull that. If you don't have one, you hopefully you saw that there is an option there for you to create one right from there. But I'm going to pull one that I've already done, and now my template is loaded. So a couple of things that you have to notice here. It's going to ask you which sheet is the information in that you want to pull from. It's in form response 1. You notice I had a couple of sheets, but everything that I want my data to pull from is in the first one, the form response 1. And then you're going to see the merge tags. So AutoCrat looked for the merge tags. It found the 4 that I put in there: first name, last name, score, and playlist. And now it's asking me to match those up with my column header. So my name tag needs to line up with which column header. In this case, it's student first name, and it automatically recognized that. If it didn't, I could go down here and select which correct column which it is, which is why it's important to make sure that each column has a header in it, so you can quickly identify which one you want it to go to. And you see my first name tag went to my student first name header, and my last name tag went to my student last name header, score tag to score header, playlist tag to playlist header. So everything is in order. So I'm going to hit save and move on. And this is where I can begin creating some merge settings. So the first thing is, how do I want this file to be named? So when this file goes to the student, what should the naming convention be? So I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to say I want it to say the student's first name, I'm going to copy that, paste it here, space, and I want to say their last name. I'm going to copy that and paste, and then maybe I can just give it a generic title at the end, so playlist. So this will say the student's first name, last name, playlist. Okay. I can select how this will be created, so I can select the file type. So right now I have it selected as a Google Doc. You can make it a PDF if you'd like. I'm going to leave it as a Google Doc. Okay. If I wanted to, I can leave it just like this and send it out. But if your students use email, if you're using email with your students, you certainly can choose to email this to them as well. So I can go in here and I can select to email this to the student. Now it's important that when you set up your form that you collect your students' email address. What's their Google account that we're going to be sending this information to. If you don't collect that, then there's no way that Autocrat will know who this information is going to. So I automatically collected mine. I checked the box off to collect it when I did my Google form. If you didn't do that, then you either need to go back and select it, or you need to include a box for students to include their email address, so that Autocrat will automatically know where to send, what Google account to send this information to. Okay, so I'm going to go in here in my email. I'm going to tell it what email address I want it to go to. The email address I want it to go to in this case is username, because that was the name of the field in my spreadsheet where I collected the student's email address. So I'm going to put that there. I can type playlist. I can type a message for my student to read. I'm just going to type something simple. See your playlist attached. Okay, and I'm going to include merge document as a view only document, editable documents, and you see you have other options here. I'm just going to include it as a view only Google Doc, and then I can hit save, and now I see my merge job here. The only thing that's really left for me to do is to run it. I can, if I want to, preview it. If I want to just take a look at it real quick before I let it go through, I can hit preview to make sure that this is going to look the way I want it to look. It'll have the student's name, it'll have their score, it'll have their playlist there, all done, and I can continue to go on to the next student and double check that. But this is how I can just preview to make sure that everything went through properly. And I see that my response to went through, my students' score and their playlist. So everything looks good. Now all that's left to do, run the merge. I hit my blue button to run it. Okay, now I can see that the jobs have been completed. It gives me a merge ID right here. It gives me a link to everything, the URL that we did, that was generated in Autocrat. So I have all my information there, and now everything has been complete. Everything has been sent to my student. To double check it, I'm going to go to my other account, the other account that I sent my information to. Okay, I see that as a student, this was the other account that I had. It sent me the email that I did before. It attached my playlist, and notice it has the naming convention that I set. My name, first and last, and then the word playlist there. I'm also going to go to my Drive account that I have for this particular account, and if I click share with me, there is my playlist ready to go for me to look at and begin interacting with. It should also be noted that in the teachers folder, I created a folder. In this case, it's called Assigning a Playlist, where I had my template, I had my form, and my spreadsheet. And it should be noted that when you do the merging process, when I complete Autocrat, this folder will automatically be created, and then every merged document that's created, all the ones that were sent to every single one of my students, will show here for me, the teacher, so I can see every document that was generated by Autocrat. So I have access to all the documents that were, and all the playlists that were developed through this process. Okay, so I see everything there. Everything went through. The only thing that I don't like is that my file is it's not a link. So that part would have to be resolved. But all the student would need to do is just go here and paste that into their address bar and go from there. So that's how you can set up a process for assigning your students playlists based off of their assessment scores. Hopefully that kind of gives you a guide. If you have questions, feel free to send me an email or contact me with any question that you have. I'd be happy to help. Thank you.